Welcome to the Shootin' Show. Stand by for shots fired.
Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of the Shootin' Show, and welcome again to this week's program. We have another great show for you, but you know, friends, we lost an important battle this past week. The Brady bill is apparently going to go into effect sometime next year. And you know what? These people who have, even the people who are pushing for the Brady bill, admit that it's not going to do much, if anything. Well, we all know that, in fact, it's going to do nothing but hinder you and I, the law-abiding citizen. So what's going to happen now? I'm not a fortune teller, but trust me on this one, I can tell you what's going to happen here. After a few years of this so-called Brady bill, the anti-crime measure, supposedly, at least in their minds anyway, what's going to happen? Nothing is going to happen, and of course crime is going to get worse. A lot of things are going to happen, and what they're going to say is that, okay, well, now we passed the Brady bill a while back, but we didn't go far enough. Now we've got to start confiscating or taking away many more types of guns than we had originally even wanted to, like in the semi-automatic ban. Well, friends, let me tell you what, this is absolutely ridiculous. If we're going to hold on to our country, if we're going to hold on to the values that literally built this country, you know, here we are in the world today, the #1 country in the entire world. The United States of America is responsible for more inventions, more wonderful things that it's brought to mankind. Despite all the detractors, here we are, numero uno, #1, and these people want to change the process by which we got here. Well, friends, most of us, and certainly I, don't agree with that at all. What we've got to do, we have got to get some responsible people in office. We've got to get some people who actually have our interests at heart. You know, friends, that's why there was an American Revolution, because the colonists over here were not being properly represented in the English government. You know, friends, we're not in a very different position in some ways than the colonists were a couple of hundred years ago. We've got to get our government back to representing us. And we are the majority of Americans. You know, the polls that are taken many times are slanted, but when an honest poll comes out, most of the population in this country believes in the private ownership of firearms. And you know, the people in Washington who pass these idiotic rules and regulations, many of them have bodyguards. They have a security staff, some people to take care of them. But what about those people out in the projects who do not have any assistance from anybody when the police are minutes, sometimes hours away? What about those of us that live out in the country? What about those of us in the suburbs that are now being subjected to all sorts of new crime waves? What are we going to do? Well, friends, we can protect ourselves. See, I haven't given up on the idea of the individual as being responsible enough to think and act for himself. I think that was the principle, one of the founding principles that our country was literally established on. Kurt and I talk about this from time to time. We've got to get the message out that, yes, in fact, the individual can and should be responsible. We've got to do that. And at many times the government is literally coming in and trying to say that, in fact, the individual can no longer take care of himself. We need somebody else, some committee somewhere way off to do that for him. Well, I disagree, and I know most of you do too. Now, friends, we're going to do something about it. With the Shootin' Show Gun Club, we're going to have the resources, the facilities. We're going to do something about getting to a vast number of the American people who don't know much about firearms. And doggone it, with your help, we're going to do it. Anyway, we've got a great show for you, and we're going to be talking about some interesting things on today's program. Let's start today's show with a Smith & Wesson 10mm pistol. Hey, how about a semi-automatic pistol that any one of us who is a responsible American ought to be able to own for themselves? Now, friends, coming from last week's program, let's take a look at the little North American mini revolver here. As you can see, it is in fact very tiny. It certainly fits way into the palm of my hand there. But I'll show you how it works. What we do, the way you load the gun, you take the pin out. First of all, you put it on half cock to do that, and the pin will come out, and just slide the cylinder out to the right side of the gun, and you can see we have 5 holes. Now then, something that's very important. The little notches between the holes in the cylinder, if we can get a look at that by my thumbnail there, this is where the hammer has to rest if you're going to carry it with a all five rounds chambered in the gun. And yes, I moved my hand. Yes, there was a mosquito there. This is Louisiana, our state bird. Anyway, and of course, we load the gun one cartridge at a time and just put it back inside the frame and put the center pin underneath the barrel. And now then, it's ready to operate. The gun's all stainless steel, I think with the exception of the mainspring there, but which is really a minor consideration. But you can see the sights are somewhat rudimentary at best, but due to the ranges the gun is intended to be used at, that's really not a problem. This gives you sort of a reference point for aiming. Very well made. These little guns are extremely reliable and certainly adequate for their intended purpose. Now friends, notice our target is in fact very close to us, but there's a reason for it. These are not target guns. Now, North American does make a couple of really target type guns on a version of this small gun. They have longer barrels, they're slightly heavier. But this particular little gun is maybe the ultimate hideout, one of the ultimate concealment guns. And it's strictly, I would think of it to be used strictly as a backup to your main weapon if you're a police officer, security guard, or even someone who is legally licensed to carry a handgun. You know, we never advocate breaking the law, but in many areas of the country, you can get a concealed carry permit, so check your local regulations. Anyway, for what these little guns are, and I am aware of at least one instance where a police officer used one of these to end a hostage situation. And if my facts are correct, and I believe they are, the way the incident happened, the policeman was taken as a hostage, and the terrorists had him come out in a swimsuit and nothing else, so they could easily see that he wasn't wearing any sort of weapon or any sort of recording device. But they didn't check in his underwear, and he had one of these little guns down literally in a very concealed place there, literally inside the swimsuit. So the terrorists made the mistake of putting the police officer in the back seat of the car that he was driving, and when the police officer, the first opportunity, he literally took the terrorists out in the back of the head with one of these little guns here. And that is at least one incident I'm aware of, that I have been told of, that one of these literally saved not only one life but several people in dealing with the terrorists. No, if I was in a gunfight, no, this would not be my first choice. But as a last resort, or as a backup, in certain situations, they are very useful. I do not recommend this as a first gun. If you're a new shooter, just new to learning about guns and shooting, no, I don't recommend this as a first gun, because you really have to know how, one, you have to take the gun seriously. It's so tiny, a lot of people would tend to think of it as a toy. Well, trust me on this one, it is not a toy. And we don't recommend this for new shooters, but for someone who is competent, who understands how firearms work, and understands the dangers involved with any loaded firearm. And though this little gun is tiny, it is in fact still a real gun, so it must be taken seriously. But here we have a rather close target, and of course here's how the gun, I'm putting my ear protection, my hearing protection in a little better, because yes, they are loud, but here's how the gun is designed to be used. See, at close or point blank type ranges. See? And below, got a little recoil, but we definitely worked on our target. So look, it is no joke, and again, for their intended purpose, these are very useful little guns. Take a look at one next time you're in the gun shop. If you're a police officer or a security guard, we highly recommend these as what some people call deep concealment for ultra hideout guns. And believe me, if this was all you had, I think it'd beat the heck out of throwing rocks.
Awesome firepower, precision rifle skills. That's what you'll find, along with lots more, in these two great new videos, Marine Corps Firepower and Marine Corps Silent Drill Team. See an actual firepower demonstration of the latest Marine Corps weapons of the infantry, including the M220 Echo-Tow missile system, grenade launchers, mortars, and lots more. Plus the Marine Corps Silent Drill Team, an incredible display of precision rifle handling skills by the most respected and admired rifle squad in the world. Two great new videos for one low price. Just $19.95 through this special TV offer. Marine Corps Firepower and Marine Corps Silent Drill Team. Two videos for the price of one. Call and order yours right now.
Call toll-free with your credit card ready, 1-800-942-8273. By ordering today, you'll receive this 32-page gun video catalog absolutely free. So order now, 1-800-942-8273. Call now.
Well, friends, we're going to look at another small gun today. This is the little Colt Mustang in .380 caliber. And as you can see from the photograph, it's just a baby brother. It certainly looks that way to the larger 1911. These guns have been in production for a number of years. They have a small, what they call a .380 government model, which is, in fact, a smaller edition of the 1911. And then they have the little Mustang, which this is, which is even smaller. It has a 5-round magazine, and it will hold one in the chamber for a total of 6. I believe that the other .380 Colt magazines will fit this gun. Tell you the truth, I haven't tried them. I think they will. I may stand to be corrected on that. But it works very much like our 1911. You have a safety back here. The difference is you can put this little gun safety on with the hammer in the down position. Now, it does not have a grip safety like its big brother there. So I don't believe that I would personally carry this gun cocked and locked. It is a single action mechanism. It only the trigger does nothing but release the hammer. It does not cock it. So the way I believe I would carry this gun, since it does have a firing pin lock, the firing pin is locked until the trigger is pulled all the way to the rear. So personally, if I were going to carry this as a backup or concealment type gun, I believe that I would carry it hammer down, safety off, and if to put the gun into action, what I would do is just be thumb cock it at that time. These are extremely well-made little guns. They are not inexpensive. This particular gun retails for around $400 or so. They are available in a couple of different finishes. You can get it in the nickel finish, I believe. They also make a model with a what they call a pocket light, which is the aluminum frame version. This one has a steel frame. And we're going to look at it up closer in just a moment. You can see literally it is smaller than my hand. And again, this is a small handgun that could be most useful. The thing is, you might not be able, due to some clothing or what other situation you were in as far as dress, you might not be able to carry a larger handgun than this easily concealed. And for those good citizens out there, there are definitely times when a lot of us need to have concealed handguns, especially now. And as we said earlier, check your local regulations as to the legality of carrying a concealed gun of any type. But these are very fine little guns. It has functioned very well for us with most ammunition. We've tried the Remington, the .380 ball ammunition. The Remington hollow points weren't quite as functional as the Winchester silver tips in this particular gun, but the silver tips so far, through about 30 or 40 rounds we've run through it, have functioned 100%, as has the ball ammunition. And again, reliability is an absolute consideration. Some of the automatics, small or large, don't function well with certain types of ammunition. So what you have to do, you have to go out and get several different types of ammunition and try them. There are some very fine loads available for the .380, and for those of you who are not familiar with the .380, it's essentially a 9mm short, much as a .38 Special is in relation to the .357 Magnum. It is a 9mm bullet in a somewhat shorter case. It's a couple of millimeters shorter. So it is a reasonable defensive round, but shot placement becomes extremely important with these little guns because you don't have a lot of muzzle energy. That you've got around a 90 or so grain bullet, and out of this little gun we chronographed it at about 850 or so feet per second, so you just don't have the velocity, so shot placement becomes very important. But these guns don't have very much recoil. In fact, let's shoot it right now. Of course, the way you load it, the magazine goes in the base, and we'll show you this up closer in just a moment, but of course we're going to pull that slide all the way to the back and let it go. And of course then we'll apply our safety while I put my hearing protection in. But watch it in my hands here, and you can see that it just doesn't very much recoil at all. It is a serious gun. Believe me, I can think of some times when, as we were talking about the little mini revolver earlier, I'd much rather have this than nothing at all. Believe me, it is still a serious gun. It does demand that the user go out and practice with it and become familiar with it, because it is an automatic, and any automatic can jam. For that matter, any revolver can jam. We've got a good story on revolvers jamming here we're going to tell you soon. But anyway, these certainly have their place. Let's look at it a little closer.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
You know, I've hunted whitetails from Maine to Minnesota, and a lot of points in between. Hi, I'm Grits Gresham, and no matter where I head out to, my hunt always begins right here, at the range. So once you've sighted in, see if you can put half your shots in a 10-inch pie plate shooting offhand at 100 yards. Truth is, that's not that easy, but here's a tip that sure is. For whatever you need for a successful deer season, go see the real pro in your community.
Now, friends, again, you can see just how small our little Colt Mustang is in 380, but you can also see the surfaces are very finely polished. It's typical of Colt handguns. They really deliver a very nice looking and typically functional gun, whatever it may be, a revolver or semi-automatic. And they've been making semi-automatics for a long, long time. Again, this little gun does not have the grip safety. Here is the thumb safety, which can be applied with the hammer down or the hammer in the cock position. Again, my personal preference would be to carry this gun. And remember, it does not have a decock, so you've got to be very careful when lowering the hammer. Personally, I like to put my thumb over the hammer and put pressure on it and pull the trigger and gently, and I do mean gently, let it down. Now, some people might like to get the gun started and release the trigger and let it down also that way. That's another way of letting it down. Here is, of course, the slide release, and we can cock the gun, and you can see it has a certainly adequate size ejection port. It has a recoil spring guide, very simply made, but very reliable and functional. So in fact, let's load the gun. You can see it does have some pretty good sights on it. Let's put a magazine here in the base, and we have the magazine loaded with 5 rounds. And remember, pull that slide back, and yes, let it go. All right, and don't put your finger on the trigger until we're ready to shoot. So let's see what it looks like in action. Remember, you've got to have a stiff wrist for these automatics to function, or semi-automatics for that matter. Let's see if we can hit that circle. And good. That's pretty good. You notice our group's pretty good there, 2 holes touching. I think it speaks pretty well for the accuracy of our little Colt. Really surprising accuracy. Of course, the slide's locked back. We did not have one in the chamber. But in fact, let's ease forward and take a look at our group there. Of course, we're not very far away, but that's really not a bad group for 5 shots. Absolutely. So that gives you some idea of just, in fact, how the little gun shoots. Well, friends, our little Colt Mustang will let the hammer down there. We know, in fact, it's empty. We'll let our hammer down. The little Mustang 380, in the short time we've had it, the good folks at Britain's loaned us this little gun for testing. It is not inexpensive, but it is a premium 380. You have to realize what the limitations of these guns are. But I tell you what, at a combat type range, this is not bad accuracy. 4 in one hole and one right over here, as we shot it, you and I shot it a few minutes ago. Really fine accuracy for what it is. These guns, to my knowledge, are pretty much trouble-free. They don't require much repair, or you just have to clean them and shoot them. So the little Colt Mustang 380, a very fine gun, one that certainly deserves taking a look at.
Our friends were going to run a feature that we had run some time ago on assault rifles, and of course no one I know is better qualified to do that than Art Alphin of the great A-Square Company. You know, Art is a retired instructor from the West Point Military Academy, so if anybody knows what assault rifles really are, he does. And one other fact we want to mention, the average person or the general public cannot buy assault weapons anyway, never has been able to, because assault rifles by definition, or assault weapons, are selective fire, which means semi-automatic and full auto. And of course the guns that we buy, the semi-automatics, are not assault weapons. There's no way. But anyway, Art's going to show us some real assault weapons, so we'll have an idea of what they in fact are.
An assault rifle is a selective fire individual weapon. When fired semi-automatic, it is intended to fill the role of the infantryman's battle rifle, and when fired on full automatic, it is intended to do better than the submachine gun. In order to make such a thing work, compromises are necessary. Most assault rifles are chambered for a class of cartridges which falls roughly midway between the pistol cartridges, such as the 9mm Parabellum, that are used in the submachine guns, and the full-powered rifle cartridges, such as the 8mm Mauser, caliber 30, and 7.62 NATO, which are used in rifles and machine guns. The basic idea got its start in the period 1936 to 38, when the Germans conducted experiments with scaled-down sporting rifle cartridges. Concepts for use of these cartridges proceeded slowly. By 1942, however, the Germans were confronted with virtual human wave attacks on the Eastern Front. Their shortage of manpower was such that frontages of 1,000 yards for a squad were not unusual. This means that an individual rifleman would have to cover a front of 80 to 100 yards, armed only with his bolt-action rifle. His nearest fire support would be the MG-34 in his squad, which might well be 500 or 600 yards away. These realities and other demands gave impetus to a German search for a greater volume of fire on the part of the individual soldier. To make a long story short, the Germans designed a selective fire individual weapon which was chambered for their reduced power cartridge from the 1930s. They named the weapon Sturmgewehr, literally translated assault rifle. The assault rifle was and is intended to give the individual soldier a selective fire capability. The hope is that when firing semi-automatic, he can fire as a rifleman, and when firing full automatic, he will at least outrange and otherwise do better than a submachine gun. Our purpose here is not to talk about the history of the assault rifle. You have watched a number of these weapons tapes and should have assimilated a historically based methodology for the evaluation of the strengths and weaknesses of any weapon and its employment in light of these strengths and weaknesses. Consequently, we will show 2 assault rifles and 1 main battle rifle and then leave you with some questions. The first weapon you will see is the AK-47. It is the preferred weapon of the Soviet bloc, and it is believed that something in excess of 40 million have been made. It is chambered for the 7.62 by 39 Russian short cartridge. This cartridge fires a 123 grain bullet at approximately 2,400 feet per second. In rough terms, this gives it approximately 60% of the energy and effect of the 7.62 NATO at the muzzle. Due to the lighter bullet's poor ballistic coefficient, the 7.62 by 39 Russian short suffers severe degradation due to air resistance. In exchange for all this, it is selective fire. The second rifle you will see is the U.S. M16A1. It is chambered for the 5.56 by 45 millimeter cartridge, firing a 55 grain bullet at 3120 feet per second. This gives it a bit less than 50% of the energy of the 7.62 NATO at the muzzle, and due to its extremely poor ballistic coefficient, this percentage decreases still further due to air resistance. It does have some greater effect than its numbers would indicate due to its muzzle velocity being over the threshold of 3,000 feet per second. However, since the ballistic coefficient is so poor and the velocity decays rapidly, this effect is all but gone by the time the bullet gets 80 or 90 yards downrange. In exchange for this, however, the recoil impulse from the 5.56 millimeter cartridge is less than that of the 7.62 NATO. The third weapon you will see is the M14 rifle, chambered for the 7.62 by 51 NATO cartridge. This cartridge fires a 150 grain bullet at 2750 feet per second. It is the equivalent of the full-powered rifle rounds which you have seen from the Boer War through World War II. The recoil from this cartridge is heavy enough so that full automatic fire from a 10-pound weapon is a virtual impossibility. Each of these weapons will engage the same targets in sequence. First will be 3 pop-up targets at 75 yards, followed by an area suppression target at 280. Then will come 2 pop-up targets at 330 yards, and for the M14 only, a single stationary target at 680 yards. Let's take a look.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or television station. Friends, for the absolute best in monthly shooting magazines, turn to Shooting Times. They have all sorts of excellent features on handguns, rifles, shotguns, and black powder by some of your favorite gun writers. Each month you'll find interesting articles on guns, shooting, reloading, and new products in the firearms industry, along with information on pending legislation of interest to all gun owners. For subscription information, call 1-800-727-4353. 1-800-727-4353. Shooting Times, the best there is.
A couple of things are readily evident from the tape. First, the M14 rifle is certainly capable of delivering accurate and effective fire to ranges far beyond what the other two are capable of. At 680 yards, the M14 scored 11 hits out of 16 rounds. Secondly, though the AK-47 and the M16A1 can be fired full automatic, it would appear that there is difficulty in controlling the automatic fire. In all cases, the bursts of fire defined a fairly large beaten zone. A more stable position and a shooting sling, which neither weapon is equipped with, might help, but the beaten zone from full automatic bursts would still be very large. On the chart, the bolt action, Garand, and M14 all have roughly the same combat range. The AK-47 and M16A1 suffer a disadvantage here. I might add that the 400 yards for the M16 adjust sight range assumes a trained rifleman and a still day. The M16A1 does not have sights adjustable for range, and it requires Kentucky windage. Further, the ballistic coefficient of the bullet is so poor that given a crosswind, the M16 bullet blows severely and erratically, and a hit at 400 yards in a wind is quite an iffy thing. The volume of fire has obviously increased from the bolt action to the Garand to the 40 rounds per minute of the M14. With full automatic bursts, the AK-47 and M16A1 are up to 60 rounds per minute. The M14's only advantage over the Garand is its 20-round detachable box magazine, which reduces time lost from reloading the weapon, and its hook butt plate, which tends to keep the weapon stable on the shoulder. However, 40 rounds per minute certainly pushes what the trained rifleman can do. If the rifleman hit with every round and had to shift to a new target after every shot, he would not be able to get 40 rounds per minute. When firing suppression, 40 rounds per minute is feasible and limited only by heat buildup. We show both the M16A1 and AK-47 at 60 rounds per minute. For short periods of time, say 3 to 4 minutes, they can be fired on full automatic at much higher volumes of fire. However, this may not be controllable fire. Further, the AK-47 and M16 fire from the closed bolt and have relatively little mass in the barrel. They heat up badly, and this limits the sustained volume of fire. The follow-on weapon to the M16A1, the M16A2, will have roughly the same volume of fire, but an improved combat range due to its heavier bullet and faster twist. The Soviet follow-on weapon, the AK-74, will likewise have the same sustained volume, but will actually suffer a degradation in combat range due to the light 5.45 millimeter cartridge. With your new M16A2, you will have parity with the AK-47 or be slightly superior to the AK-74. There are basically two schools of thought concerning the assault rifle. One school is that the assault rifle is neither fish nor fowl. The cartridges for the assault rifle give up so much in power that they do not qualify for effective long-range rifle fire. On the other hand, they still have enough recoil so that the controlled, accurate bursts of the submachine gun are non-existent. The opposing school of thought holds that the assault rifle is the optimum blend of all weapons characteristics. The average rifleman cannot hit anything beyond 400 yards or will not be able to see anything beyond 400 yards, and therefore there is no reason to give him a rifle which will shoot beyond 400 yards. In exchange for this acknowledgement of reality, full automatic capability is more than worthwhile. What do you think? You have seen many weapons in these tapes. You have seen examples of leaders who tailored their organization and tactical plan to take advantage of the strengths of their weapons and shield themselves from the weaknesses. What are the strengths and weaknesses of an assault rifle? If the AK-47 and M16A2 have parity, and yet the enemy armed with the AK-47 outnumbers you greatly, under what conditions will you join battle? What will you do to give yourself the winning edge? Does the edge lie in training and morale? If so, does that tend to undercut the idea that the soldier will not be able to shoot past 400 yards? At one time, the U.S. Army could certainly do so. Perhaps the winning edge lies not within the rifle, but in the other weapons that are present, such as artillery or tanks or something else. If so, then what does the infantry do? If the M16A2 has parity with the AK-47 in both combat range and volume of fire, then any engagement within M16 range is by definition decisive. How much of a winning edge must you have to accept decisive engagement with a numerically superior enemy? When you ask that question, then ask yourself what Daniel Morgan, or Custer, or Edward III, or Robert E. Lee would have answered. The question is obviously quite complex and goes far beyond a consideration of the rifles alone. It must encompass not only weapons, but the training of the individual soldier and even the society from which he comes. The point is that throughout history, no weapon has ever done everything. Every weapon has a unique set of advantages and disadvantages. You must take advantage of the strengths and shield yourself from the weaknesses. There are adequate historical examples to guide you. Regardless of the results of your analysis concerning the assault rifle, I would urge you to carefully consider the questions. In watching these tapes, you have received a good background in the history of weapons, their characteristics, and their effect on the battlefield. Whatever you do, ensure that you have the winning edge. Battle is not conducted on Queensberry rules. Whenever lives are at stake, only a fool or a desperate man will fight on even odds. You must ensure that you have the winning edge.
Friends, I hope you really enjoyed that piece that Art Alphin just gave us on what real assault rifles are. Now, this Colt Sporter is in fact not an assault rifle. It is in fact a sporting rifle. And as we've talked on many occasions, the 223 is an excellent varmint cartridge. It's really too small a cartridge to hunt deer with. And I've heard people refer to these as weapons of mass destruction. No, I don't think so. It's something I want to read to you. It's an advertisement that Kurt recently faxed down to us. And I'd like to say that you're going to be seeing more of Kurt Vickers. He's working on some projects right now. He is so important to this program. He does a lot of work behind the scenes, and without him, the program would, in fact, not be what it is. So he's going to be doing some more things, and this is one of them. He sent this to me, and let me read this to you. The first of this starts with 60 shots per minute, Henry's patent repeating rifle, the most effective weapon in the world. It says this rifle can be discharged 16 times without loading or taking down from the shoulder or even losing aim. It is also slung in such a manner that either on horse or on foot, it can be instantly used without taking the strap from the shoulder. For a house or sporting arm, it has no equal. It is always loaded and always ready. Now you'd think they might be talking about this Colt Sporter. No, they're not. They're talking about the Henry repeating rifle. This ad came out in the 1860s. So wait a minute. We've had high-capacity guns literally here in the United States that was available not just to the Army but to everybody since the 1860s. So today, suddenly, we've come to a place in our civilization that we're no longer responsible enough to have the same things that was available to us back in the 1860s? I don't think so. Let me read another little piece here. Now, friends, here's a little poem that was written some time ago, and here's what it says. This is important. Pay attention. It says, "Be not afraid of any man, no matter what his size. When danger threatens, call on me, and I will equalize." That was an inscription on a Colt, and it wasn't on this 1911. It was on a Colt single-action Army, a single-action pistol of many years ago, or single-action revolver for that matter. You know, friends, this is a 1911, a Colt 45, in fact, 1911. Why do you think it's called 1911? It's because that's when the final design was finally made on this gun. These guns have been around not only in the U.S. military, but in the general population since the early 1900s. And suddenly people are saying, oh, those terrible semi-automatics. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, let me read something to you that's from the Associated Press. This article came out in the newspaper just a few days ago. It says, gun-toting pedestrian kills muggers. It says shooting that led to two teenagers' death is called self-defense. Now, this is in New York City. It seemed like a perfect night for mugging. The street was dark, the hour late, the Brooklyn neighborhood rough. But the teenage boys who stalked Arthur Boone as he left a corner market Sunday missed one thing, the .44 Magnum tucked in his belt. One of the muggers, nicknamed B-Boy, put the head of a BB gun to Boone's head. The other, Taz, reached for his wallet. Then Boone fired 3 shots heard round the city. In what investigators are calling a swift act of self-defense, Boone shot and killed his assailants with the unlicensed .44. He waited for the police to arrive, told them he was a victim of past muggings, and quietly surrendered. As news of the incident spread through the crime-weary city, some hailed the 41-year-old machine worker as a hero. The muggers used poor judgment, and I'm delighted they did, said Jerry Presser, president of a city gun club that sent Boone a $500 Courageous Victim Award. I think they got what they deserved. Boone was arraigned on charges of criminal possession of a weapon and freed Monday without bail. Now, that's the good news. He was freed without bail. The problem is, friends, you see, the only people who are disarmed by these ridiculous gun laws is not you and me, the law-abiding citizen, because we're not going to get in trouble anyway. The people who need to be affected are the criminals, and this is something that absolutely, due to the nature of our justice system and a lot of other reasons, is just flatly not being done. The simple answer that these people see, they say, well, just take away the bad old guns. Well, these people are lunatics, because the gun is just like those stick dogs we talked about in the military. When they're training attack dogs and the dog is trained to go after a man with a stick, if the dog keeps going for the stick, he's thought to be untrainable. We've got some untrainable people out there, I'm afraid. Some of them are in the U.S. government, some are in local governments in a lot of places in the country. Well, friends, here's your chance. We're going to do something about it. You know, we're going to adopt some of the strategies that some of our opponents have had by going throughout this country to the smaller towns, to the medium-sized towns, meeting with civic groups, meeting with police organizations. We're going to do it. We're going to have fun gun days, and if you want to help us, if you have a gun club, please call us and tell us you'd like to help us sponsor a fun gun day in your region. We've already gotten several different regions of the country that gun clubs have called and offered their assistance, and we really do appreciate it, and we certainly need more. You can join the Shootin' Show Gun Club. This is very important. The Shootin' Show Gun Club, 554 Kings Highway, Shreveport, Louisiana. Our zip code 71104. Now, we'll take a personal check, we'll take a money order, we'll take Visa or MasterCard. You can call us at 1-800-895-7916. Now get a pencil and write this down, 800-895-7916. We've got to continue our work in Washington, D.C. that the NRA and some other gun groups, Gun Owners of America, some others are doing, and that's great. But friends, we're going to have to do a whole lot more. We've been fighting in Washington, and look where we are. This Brady Bill thing may go into effect. It's not going to have any effect on crime at all. Pay attention, none at all. And if we could just get those people to understand this, I'm not sure we can get them to understand this. The liberal establishment, the anti-gun establishment, I'm not sure they can understand anything. But they can understand this. They can understand being taken out of office. They can understand being voted out. And if enough of us stand up for our rights, see, they can't take them away if enough of us do it. So friends, come on, join the Shootin' Show Gun Club. It's only $25 per year for your membership, and of course you get to buy from the Bullet Express not only what we offer, but anything we can get at cost plus 10% plus shipping and handling. And please, when you call in and make an order, if you're already a member, please give your membership number. That helps our bookkeeping establishment. So anyway, friends, we need you. You know, there's nothing wrong with me or you, if you're a responsible citizen, certainly as I am, in having a Colt Sporter / AR-15 or anything else that's certainly reasonable. So friends, we need to do something. We've got to take some action, and we're going to do it. We're going to do something about it. So please join the Shootin' Show Gun Club today.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
Hi, I'm Bill McIntyre with another update from Capitol Hill here at NRA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Recently, the FBI marched into politics and attacked law-abiding gun owners with radical gun control recommendations. FBI officials recommended that the Bureau endorse a wide range of gun control. Anti-gun provisions like mandatory licensing, semi-auto bans, ammunition bans, and increased regulation of licensed dealers were included. The most recent developments cast the whole matter into the hands of the United States Attorney General, Janet Reno. In a letter from an FBI official, the anti-gun proposals were submitted for consideration by the Attorney General. Until the Attorney General takes action, the anti-gun recommendations do not establish an FBI policy on gun control, according to the letter. Clearly, if the FBI was engaged in partisan politics, it would destroy the confidence of the executive branch, the Congress, and the American people. The NRA is encouraging its members and all Americans to insist that Congress and the White House keep the FBI out of politics. I'll be back next week with another update from Capitol Hill.
Now, friends, you can get in touch with your congressman or senator by writing to the Honorable whoever, and at this time on a lot of them, the Honorable is under question, isn't it? Anyway, at the U.S. Capitol, House or Senate, Washington, D.C., zip code is 20515. That's for the House, and you know the Senate has a different zip code. The zip code for the Senate is 20510. Now, if you don't know who your congressman or your senator is, and a lot of people don't out there now, a lot of us have kind of lost touch with the government, so you can find out by calling area 202-224-3121 and give them your zip code, and they can tell you who your representative or senator is. So that's another thing that we can do. Friends, we've got to do something, and this is one of the things that we can do. Let's get in touch with that congressman or that senator, and let's let them know what we think.
Well, friends, you know, we've had a lot of interest in cleaning guns because we have a lot of new shooters, and they're not exactly sure just, in fact, how to clean their firearm. People that have, we were talking earlier today, a lot of us grew up in an appliance age or computer age, certainly, and they're used to maintenance-free car batteries, maintenance-free all sorts of things. Well, let me tell you what, even though some of these guns are made of stainless steel, they're really not maintenance free. To get the optimum performance out of your firearm, it has to be, at least every once in a while, it has to be clean. If you have this is a revolver, of course, if you have a semi-automatic pistol like this Colt, trust me on this one, for it to operate smoothly and properly and efficiently and to keep from jamming on you at the worst possible time, it has to be occasionally cleaned. You'll have, when powder burns, you'll have some residue build up, some chemicals left behind by the combustion of the gunpowder and the primer too, for that matter. So you have to do this occasionally. Now, those of us that shoot a good bit, we'll clean these guns every couple of days or once a week, probably, in many cases. So what we're going to do, this is the single best gun cleaner that I have ever encountered, and this is RB17, which you folks have seen on our show many times. This is the single best gun cleaner I have ever seen. It is, I believe it's 17, am I correct on this, 17% Teflon. And so it will not scratch the finish, but one thing I want to remind you folks, if you have one of the common gun cleaners, they will leave a lightly oiled surface on some of the petroleum-based gun cleaners. They'll leave a slight residue of oil on the surface. RB17 will not. When you clean your gun with RB17, it is, in fact, absolutely clean. It removes the rust, any crud or lead buildup, whatever else. You must oil your gun after you do clean it. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at a couple of things here briefly on how to clean your gun. We have our cleaning jag on the end of our rod, and toilet paper works extremely well, but most of us are used to using gun patches, and for today's project, I think that's what we'll probably use. One, it's a lot simpler for me at the moment. But what we're going to do, we're going to soak a patch in RB17 and soak it liberally. Of course, you can pour it on the gun. We're going to do that in just a minute. And put it up there on the barrel. And I have a bore protector on the end of this rod. And of course, we'll push it through, get the bore protector in place. And I'm going to run it back and forth several times. Now, the best thing probably to do is put it in the barrel and leave it for a few minutes. Am I correct on that? Thank you very much. And leave it in the barrel for a few minutes and give the RB17 a chance to work, because literally it will dissolve this lead and the brass and things left from shooting jacketed bullets, certainly. So another thing we're going to do, the cylinder here, the back of the cylinder really does get dirty. And the ratchet that the hand has to work on to turn the cylinder, it really needs to be cleaned occasionally. And of course, another area, the front of the cylinder, even on this stainless gun, gets real dark. And of course, you have the buildup around the firing pin hole in that area. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, I've got an old toothbrush here that I'm going to pour some RB17 on, like so. And I'm going to take that toothbrush and I'm just going to put it all over the back of the gun there. And of course, we'll put it in the cylinder also, but I want to be sure that I get the ejector star on the revolver. I want to be sure I get it well covered. And I'm also going to do the same thing on the front of the cylinder. Now, if you want to get all this off, you can put some RB17 on Scotch-Brite, and you can rub it, and it'll just clean it up. It'll be as slick as the day it was when it came out of the factory. But I'm going to take this old toothbrush, and I'm going to clean the back of the barrel. I'm going around in the top of the frame here. And meanwhile, I'm also going to put the toothbrush down. I'm going to put some more RB17 on a fresh patch here, and I'm going to, or in fact, I believe I'll use a bore brush instead. And I should have one here handy, about right here, on another rod. In fact, if I can ever get it out, we're going to put the bore brush on a cleaning rod. And I'll just dip the bore brush there in the RB17, and I'm going to run it in the cylinder. And just, I mean, it's going to be a little bit messy, but yes, it does clean up well. And I'm just going to run it through each hole in that cylinder and give it a few minutes. I would think, if you really want to do it right, give it, 15 or 20 minutes. Am I correct? Somewhere in that neighborhood. So even 10 minutes, 5-7 minutes will be a help to you. So, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this, I'm going to let it sit for just a minute,
And meanwhile, I'm going to clean this barrel on this Colt 45. Now, I've been shooting this gun a good bit with lead bullets, and it really has a lot of lead buildup in the barrel. And we know it's empty. All right, we'll take it down. And friends, when you clean these guns, please, please, please double and triple check to be sure that they're unloaded. There's just no excuse for having an accident with an unloaded gun, because you won't ever have it. Now, friends, since we're so short on time, we're going to come back next week and show you just, in fact, how well RB17 does clean these guns up. We're going to show you the results there that we got a few minutes after the segment you just saw. Anyway, RB17, you can get it through the Bullet Express from us here on the program. You can look for it in your local gun shop. A lot of gun shops around the country have it. They also make some other fabulous products, the bluing, the oil, other things. The RB17 is just top-notch stuff, absolutely. So we'll see the results on next week's show. You know, friends, as shooting enthusiasts, all of us should be subscribing to Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. 3 big issues monthly with literally thousands and thousands of firearms bargains. Shotgun News, Post Office Box 669, Hastings, Nebraska. That zip is 68902. Their phone number, area 402-463-4589. For MasterCard or Visa subscriptions only, call them at 1-800-345-6923. You know, we're very pleased to be working with Soldier of Fortune magazine, and it has the distinction of being one of the most truthful periodicals in existence. Soldier of Fortune talks about all sorts of military situations all over the world, but it also is a news magazine. You can find out a lot of things that are going on, not only in this country, but all over the world, right there in the pages of Soldier of Fortune. For subscription information, call them at 1-800-877-5207. And on next week's show, we intend to feature Bob Brown on a hunting trip. Bob Brown, of course, the editor of Soldier of Fortune. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Well, friends, we've run out of time again, but we do want to issue a welcome to all those new viewers on the Outdoor Channel. We do appreciate you being with us. We certainly hope you've enjoyed today's shooting show, and we look forward to seeing you next week on another shooting show.